to the April Homeless Solutions Advisory Council. Thank you for those participating online and around the table. We do have quorum, so we are gonna get started. I don't think we have any introductions this time. Staff, we're good? Okay. So we will move to public comment. If we have public comment in person or online, now is the time.
I have.
Wonderful.
Rigoberto Lopez, community member / assistant director of housing services and consent. I just wanted to bring something up, something about the shelter ramp down that happened in the last month. I don't know what meeting I was in, but it was mentioned that we were gonna get some help on messaging to get to our participants, and that never happened. So I just kind of bring attention to that. I was more curious about you guys' change management plan, if that was even considered. Feel like, you know, when there's a change going on, there's some management around that. So just putting that out there for you guys. Yeah, so that's super important because that's impacted some of our participants. So all I wanted to put out there. Thank you.
Thank you. Wonderful. Thank you. Do we have anybody online?
Comment in the chat.
Great. Perfect. Thank you so much. We will move on to the consent agenda.
Yes. So, I'm filling in today, Zoe. I'll run this for you since you missed, our performance evaluation subcommittee meeting for your fabulous gala. Which congratulations to Community Action, who had a really successful event. Was that only last week?
Yeah.
Wow, okay. Last week. We held a performance evaluation technical subcommittee meeting where we went over the system performance measures. Folks may recall, we approved this last year. System performance measures are a required report from HUD on some key pieces of information about our system. So it helps tell us how folks are inflowing into the system, outflowing into the system. Those materials are posted on your Solutions Council website under the Performance Evaluation Technical Subcommittee. We had quorum for that meeting, though I'll note 4 members were absent. There were sufficient members to vote. And the system performance measures received a unanimous recommendation to be submitted to HUD. They were due last Friday, so we submitted them on time and are coming back here for a consent agenda motion for your bylaws. So, Chair, we didn't provide you a written script, happy to speak it to you, or if you feel like you can wing it, I trust you. I'll provide it to you. The motion we're looking for is someone to say, I move to approve the system performance measures as recommended by the Performance Evaluation Subcommittee on April, what date was that? April 9th.
I'm sorry, did we get a chance? Did you just say we're not looking at them, or did we see them already? I'm sorry, I'm confused.
Yeah, appreciate that. And then maybe this is a great clarification moment for our newer members. Typically for the consent agenda, we don't bring that content to Solutions Council.
Okay.
But Performance Evaluation Technical Subcommittee received the presentation and had dialogue with staff.
I mean, it's kind of hard to vote. I hear you. I'm just weird. It just feels weird to vote on something I haven't seen, whether or not it's on consent agenda. Like, I can look at it, it could still be on consent agenda, right?
Yes, Chelsea, will you, maybe we'll come back to consent agenda at the end, just to make sure folks have a chance, and we'll put the system performance measures in the chat, and come back. Does that work?
Yeah, it does. I just want to say I use consent agenda for my board. And what I do is I send them the packet of information. It includes the reports that I expect them to approve on consent agenda unless someone has questions. So they have a chance to review the information. And then if they don't have questions, they just vote to approve it.
Rachel, I think we typically do that. We're missing our advisory body's staff, and I'm realizing I sent it out and forgot to attach that. So that is on me. Thanks for calling that out. Okay, does that work?
Yes, we will come back
quickly,
to it.
folks in the room, would you like a printed copy
You're gonna post it.
in the chat here? Or we can email it out as well. Chelsea, are you able to do that?
Yeah,
Okay.
great. Thank you. Is Metro on yet?
Metro's here. Hi, in person.
Yes. So you're not on, you're here.
Right here, yes.
Fantastic. Well, that makes it really easy then to move into our next agenda item. which is around regional alignment in homeless services, and we have Metro staff here to talk about our Tri-County planning body.
Yes. Hi, everyone. So nice to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me to this space. It's so nice to see some very familiar and friendly faces and our TCPB committee members like Zoe here. I know Cameron is, oh, there you go. Okay. Cameron, and also, yeah, some other partners virtually. I don't know, Nicole, if you.
Yeah, I have a
you
quick
wanna-
intro slide before I turn things over, if
Yeah.
that works.
So I'll just introduce myself before I start the presentation. My name is Valeria McWilliams. I use she, her, ella pronouns. I'm the Regional Alignment Supervisor in the Metro Housing Department, and I've had the pleasure to stand up this body and staff it for the past 2.5 years. So I think I'll be able to answer most of your questions since I've been through it all. So happy to be here again. Yeah, excited to share with you all what we've been up to. So I'll hand it over to Nicole first.
Great. And thanks, Valeria, for joining. I'll share, this is Valeria's first time out in a community talking about TCPB, so we're really excited to bring y'all's feedback back to that space for future conversations. And then on the next slide, just to tee up some of this conversation, we think of regionalism in a few different ways as the 4 jurisdictions. This is a slide we presented to the Tri-County Planning Body a while back, just to give some examples of the way regionalism shows up outside of the Tri-County Planning Body goals. It's kind of hard to see, but just to call out, there's the brown circle is administrative coordination or consolidation. So that looks like a common request for proposals that helps determine request for qualifications rather, to help determine who's eligible to provide SHS funds. That also shows up like programmatic coordination. We all use the same HMIS system. And it shows up as policy coordination. Our regional long-term rental assistance has the same policies and was developed as a regional program across all 3 counties. And then there's ways that those intersect, and I'll call out the risk mitigation program has some administrative coordination, programmatic coordination, and certainly policy coordination as well. So there's ways we've been doing regionalism outside of those Tri-County Planning Body goals, and continue to work on regionalism within those goals and beyond those goals. I'll just quickly call out, Valeria will go over this, but the risk mitigation program has been adopted into a Tri-County Planning Body goal. So it was a pre-regionalism effort, and now it's part of our Tri-County Planning Body work. So I'll pause to see if there's any questions for me before I turn things over to Valeria.
Could you tell me again what request for pre-qualification means?
Yeah, so the great question, Jim. So we in the Tri-County region put out a request for pre-qualification to determine which providers would be eligible to deliver SHS services. So it essentially was a way for providers to apply once to be eligible throughout the region.
Thank you.
All right, Valeria, I'll turn it over to you.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, so what I'm hoping to cover with you all today is very briefly the origin of TCPB, a little bit of background on the launch and development that we've had for the past 2 years, the 6 regional goals that the committee identified, and the current status on implementing some of these very exciting system level work. Oh, sorry, next slide. So how did the TCPB come to be? Well, the Supportive Housing Services is a regional initiative through ballot measure 26-10. And that really created the framework that is calling out, and I'll share a little bit about the specific language, both in the ballot measure, our intergovernmental agreements, and the TCPB chart itself that really provides the scope of work for this committee. Pre-2020, before the ballot measure, there was no single entity existed to organize some of these systems at a regional level. And we did feel, especially with the success of the work of the Affordable Housing Bond Program, that we were uniquely positioned to meet the complexity of this crisis and potentially work on integrating some of the SHS and Affordable Housing Bond Programming. So, next slide. I also have standing here. So yeah, more specifically, what did the ballot measure language say about the TCPB? So it said that this body was responsible for identifying regional goals, strategies, and outcome metrics related to addressing homeless in the region. It tasked Metro to staff and provide the logistical support to convene and maintain a tri-county homeless services planning body. We have been meeting monthly for the past 2.5 years. So really full speed ahead, and at times we refer to it as sort of like a bullet train with the amount of work and the frequency that we've met to get this work started. What else was in this ballot measure? It specifically called for each county to annually contribute not less than 5% of each of the county share of the supportive housing services revenue to a regional strategy implementation fund, which is known as the RIF for short, Regional Investment Fund. Next slide. The other kind of framework that we use for this is our intergovernmental agreement. Again, this is strengthening the language around convening the TCPB to strengthen coordination among the counties and Metro in addressing homeless in the region. And once again, doubling down the scope of the committee to identify regional goals, strategies, and outcome metrics for the support of regional SHS coordination and alignment. The next layer of it is our own TCPD charter. So in this charter, we are tasked to develop a regional plan. This committee will approve and monitor financial investments by the counties from the RIF, the Regional Investment Fund, and monitor and provide guidance on the implementation of the regional plan. So yeah, like I was mentioning, we've been meeting for about 2.5 years. So we started with our onboarding members in summer of 2022. We had our charter approved in October of 2022, and then the committee started doing a regional needs and analysis during the winter of 2022 through 2023. In May of 2023, really, they voted on 6 specific regional goals that they had identified. And since then, Metro and counties have been developing implementation strategies to complete these goals. So March 2024 really marked the first time that the committee approved a regional plan, and this was for the landlord recruitment and retention goal. The oversight committee provides final approval of these plans. So it's not a final approval until it's also come to the oversight committee. We do build in briefings to the oversight committee, so they are in the know of the process and sort of the draft regional strategies that are starting to emerge before we come before them to ask for that final approval. Next slide. So before I kind of mentioned the 6 TCPB goal areas that were identified, the committee went through a very fun posted exercise in person where we asked, like, what are some of the regional policies that you want to consider this body to take on and to also invest on? And so here are some examples of what those Post-it notes say. Things like regionalized move-in melanoma, integration wraparounds, voluntary services, evaluate the impact of specific program types. So there was a very long and very comprehensive wish list that the committee came up with, and we also combined it with a wish list that the counties had once the committee started as a recommendation of what the committee should also consider in identifying goals. And you can go to the next slide, but when we had this exercise with the committee, our thoughts were, okay, the committee is gonna be identifying one specific goal, and then we'll develop an implementation plan for that goal. And we ended up with the exercise leading to 6 goals, not 1, and all of them setting direction for staff both county and metro to work on these simultaneously and come with plans before the committee to approve them. So these are the 6 TCPB goal areas that were identified around employee recruitment and retention, coordinated entry, regional landlord recruitment, healthcare systems alignment, service provider technical assistance, and training for frontline workers. As the committee was identifying this, we were having some conversations both with city staff and the state, and we were pleased to know that a lot of these priority areas were in alignment with what the city, counties, and also at the state level were emerging for them as well. So that was really important for us to know that there was also momentum in some other spaces to move this work forward. So I will go through each goal. I'm not going to read the whole slide, but just providing some of the goal language. So the first one that I mentioned is around employee recruitment and retention. And this is language that our committee members drafted and approved. So for employee recruitment and retention, our committee asked to have county contracts for SHS funded agencies and providers will establish standards throughout the region to achieve livable wages for direct service staff. For each one of these goals, there were specific recommendations that the committee made for staff to consider. There were either specific actions or just more considerations as we work through the development of strategies that would complete and successfully achieve this goal. The status on this goal specifically is we're in the middle of drafting implementation strategies. We are looking for tentative approval by the TCPB by June of this year. So tune in for that one. Next slide. The second goal is around coordinated entry, and the goal language reads, coordinated entry is more accessible, equitable, and efficient for staff and clients. The implementation plan was approved in October of last year. We are currently monitoring progress on 4 of the implementation strategies in that plan, and also establishing oversight and quarterly reporting through the work group. Our first quarterly progress report on the coordinated entry just got published on our website. The TCPB had a chance to review it in their meeting last week. And we received very positive feedback on it. These are the 4 implementation strategies that we are now starting to provide reporting on: regionalized visibility of participant data, aligned assessment questions, regionalized approaches to prioritization and racial equity, and regionalized an approach to case conferencing. And I'm more than happy to be able to send these plans afterwards if you all want to dive in a little bit deeper. The third one is regional landlord recruitment. And the goal here is to increase the availability of readily accessible and appropriate housing units for service providers. This implementation plan was approved in March of 2024, and there were specifically 5 implementation strategies for this particular plan. Setting up a communication and education plan, aligning financial landlord incentives, tracking and access to unit inventory, prioritize quality problem-solving services, investigate needs for property management. And that their first quarterly progress report is due to the committee in June. Next slide. For healthcare systems alignment, the goal is for greater alignment and long-term partnership with healthcare systems that meaningfully benefit people experiencing homelessness and the systems that serve them. I am super excited to report that this implementation plan was approved by our committee in last week. Yes, last week. And we are going to start monitoring the progress on 5 implementation strategies. Develop a regional plan for medically enhanced housing and shelter models, establish regional system for cross-system care coordination, build regional cross-system data sharing infrastructure. So Adam, your hand went up.
No, I was just trying to make like a fireworks emoji and I
Oh.
couldn't figure out how to do it.
That's, yes, celebrate, with you, yes, thank you. Yes, and, Hellshare has been a really, good partner, in this specific plan. And we can talk more about it, but, we also will be coming for a request of final approval on this plan by the Oversight Committee on the 28th, Monday, the 28th of this month. So we look forward to that before, putting it up on the website. And then the fifth goal is service provider technical assistance. The goal is to have organizations with access to the technical assistance required to operate at a high level of organization functionality. The needs of cultural specific providers will be prioritized through all program design. And currently there is one specific a pilot project that Metro is leading around a PSH technical assistance demonstration and research project. I won't go into all the details, but right now that specific implementation strategy was approved in February of this year, and there are additional implementation strategies for this goal that are under development, and we're expecting to present those before the committee in June. So very busy June month for us. And then the last one is training for frontline workers. For this goal, we're hoping the service providers have access to the knowledge and skills required to operate at a high level of program functionality. The needs of cultural specific providers will be prioritized through all program design. We are currently in the process, and when I say we, it's Metro and the counties. This is very much a partnership in putting these together. We're drafting implementation strategies and also tentative approval for the committee in June of this year. And I just wanted to point out again, you just saw a lot of the strategies that are within each of the goals, and we are so lucky to have a regional investment fund that supports operationalizing a lot of this work. I mentioned it very quickly earlier in my presentation, but the Regional Investment Fund, again, is funded by 5% of each of the counties. SHS program funds each fiscal year, and these funds are for the use on regional programming and projects guided by TCPD. So again, this is just where we're at right now. We're continuing to prepare regional implementation strategies for review and approval to the committee. We should be wrapping all of those by the end of this fiscal year. So June is going to be a very busy month for the committee. We will continue at the same time to monitor the progress on the regional strategies that did get approved. We provide monthly progress reports to the committee. We've been providing them now for a year. And we have started providing those quarterly progress reports. And continue to work with the counties in preparation for the FY26 budget as well. Okay, so that's my presentation. I'm happy to take, or sorry, looking at you, happy to take questions now, or do you want to lead the discussion?
Let's see if there's any clarifying questions before we dive into our discussion.
Or any committee member that would like to share a few words?
Yeah, I have been part of this committee since the beginning, and I just want to mention that regionalism takes time, and we also realize that we're many different in the 3 counties, and we don't want to change that. I feel like local should remain local what works, but we can inform what can we utilize this approach, what can we make better, you know, like the goals that we for 2 years. Finally. And I think it is important to have some shared priorities and the 3 counties, and hopefully you also align with the goals that we have put out there.
Cameron, would you like to say anything?
Am I allowed to?
Oh,
This
sorry.
year is like a.
I guess.
Oh, you're right. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
I'll make you a little presenter right now if you want to share anything about TCPB experience as a TCPB member during this presentation.
Yeah, it is a lot of work. I'm actually one of the newer members to TCPB. So joining TCPD as all of this work is coming to be approved has been kind of one of those, like a lot of information all at once kind of thing, kind of like how we presented all of these strategies right now feels like that.
That's.
So I wanted to be part of the TCPD because I understand the cross-section and the movements of our unhoused people in this area. And in order to try and help those who move across our counties, we needed a regional approach. So I voted for it. I'm glad it exists. It's nice to see that it's working, and I want more people to know that it's working because we need to continue this great work, and we need to vote for it to be approved when we get it ready to be voted on. And that's kind of why I wanted to be part of it, is to make sure we can build it to last.
Well said.
Yeah, thank you so much for your presentation. And for the folks that were on the committee, thanks for all your work, because this looks like a major amount of work. What came to mind was you had a slide that said something about maintaining the unique kind of contributions to the system of each county while you standardize or find those strengths across system. Could you characterize some of that? Could you give us just a little flavor of the things that you think will be different from community to community, or things that will be drawn from each community? I think Move In Multnomah was the only example that I kind of caught, like, oh, okay, that's a specific thing that Multnomah County has been doing that, is now on the table to regionalize, but, would you expect that to look the same, or is that one of the things that will be different? So just give us a little bit more flavor of how the strengths of each individual kind of unique contribution will be maintained.
Yeah, that's a really good question. Well, I think it's varies case by case depending on the specific goal. We have work groups that for most of these goals now that have been standing for a little bit over a year, where staff from each county and metro come together to do exactly what you're describing, which is understanding what is the value add of regionalizing anything that is currently happening at a county level, and does it make sense? Because I think I will just speak for me, the way that we've been coming into the conversation is we don't want to regionalize for the sake of regionalizing. We want to regionalize to make sure that if it's something that's going to lead to more equitable outcomes, if it's something that we feel like there's going to be a bigger impact if we do it all together. And the counties have been really good at knowing what they do best and where they see the opportunities to present as a potential regional pilot project. So in some cases, they went through, even the counties have gone through some of this list, and they've said, actually, that doesn't work for Washington County. What we're doing works just fine. I think that training and technical assistance may be probably the best example of how everyone's keeping to what you mentioned, like their own flavor. And it's because we understand that some of that has to just be really tailored to the specific situation of each county, their contract management, their budget. And so there is a lot of considerations and a lot of factors that go into proposing for something to be regional or not. I see, Adam, your hands up. Do you want to share a little bit on the healthcare and how that exercise?
Yeah, Stacy, I was going to give you a really clear example kind of from the healthcare alignment goal that we've been working on, and that each of our 3 counties that HealthShare serves, which is Clackamas, Washington, Multnomah counties, each of them has started their own cross-sector case conferencing project, which is pathways between homeless services providers and healthcare providers being able to communicate about members. And each county is doing it a little bit differently, but what the regional goal talks about is to create more of a backbone and more of a supportive infrastructure for that process, to provide a data infrastructure so that we're not just looking at one county's data, we're able to look at 3 different counties' data to really align in our healthcare goals that are related to cross-sector case conferencing. So while each county has its own focus area and who they're working with, we are aligned in how, in the process itself, what we're doing, and then making sure that if we're seeing disparities amongst one county, that we're sharing like a best practices group from that's a tri-county wide group that really can spread this process and this project. Well, each county does it individually in its own way too. So it's been a really cool process to be a part of.
And I might add one example if it pleases our chair. I think another area, sorry, Kim. I think another area where it's important to understand the local needs of each county and where regionalism might look like things being delivered differently is, I often say our service providers in each of the counties are really different. We have crossover, we have some that work in multiple areas, but when I think of the needs of our service provider, a Forest Grove Foundation doesn't need the same thing as a New Narrative, who's another one of our providers, but works in Multnomah County. So there's just some distinction in terms of the ways we need to support our workforce and our providers based on the history of the county, and also the other programs operating within the county and what else is available. I think, you know, our CAT system is, when those are up and running, are unique to our area, and we need to make sure that our system talks to that system, and ensuring that communication happens will likely look different in Multnomah County, where their behavioral health system looks a little different.
I am pleased.
Great.
And I see Stacy and Sabi too.
It's so pleasant. All right, so one more question. When you're talking about, you know, best practices and we want to make sure we're getting similar outcomes, but we're doing things differently, it would be really strengthened if you had thought about how you'll be a little bit kind of, I don't know, holding peers accountable, I'll just say it that way, so that it's not endlessly we're going to do things however we do them, but we're actually building in a way to say, you know, when your process is not working as well as the standard or whatever, the regionalized one, whatever we want to call it, then you have some kind of accelerated need to improve. Like building in that improvement somehow would be really helpful. And I think it would strengthen our case later when we need to, you know, talk about how this will pass again. It just sounds like an opportunity to me because there's a lot of knowledge transfer, it sounds like, that's going on in this, and making sure that we close the loop and say we do expect the knowledge that transfers and the things that are different and the same to be functional, to be working as well as they can, kind of thing, and continuously improving.
Thank you so much for that comment. That's what we're hoping our quarterly progress report helps us have, is the tool to be able to have that conversation. And I would love to share that with you all and see, you know, I don't know that it gets to that it prompts that level of discussion, but that's a really good suggestion, because right now our quarterly progress report is just, you know, the oversight and accountability is just like, are you meeting the metric, you know, are you meeting the timeline, are you meeting the budget, are you meeting the metrics, but we're not having a bigger conversation about what you just uplifted. So
Yeah.
the qualitative and the rich like knowledge sharing, yeah.
Right. And I mean, I think because you have the agreement that this 5% is what you're funding, you know, you need to have that next level of agreement, right? That we're actually pushing to make sure this isn't just, you know, study and nice and measuring, but we don't ever say that, no, you have to improve. Like you have to keep up. Each county has to be able to provide the things that they're learning, right? I don't know how else to say it, but I think you got it.
Yeah, I think what I'm hearing is some sort of like evaluation framework to make sure that the work is, yeah, complementary. But thank you so much. I'll definitely bring that back. Appreciate it.
For clarifying questions, and we can move to the discussion questions. We've already kind of dove into some of these, but I'll pose the question out loud just while folks think. Regarding the Tri-County Planning Body goals, what are some of the most important opportunities for regionalizing our homeless services work? Yes, Jim.
Coordinated entry.
You wanna say more?
Need I?
No, not really.
One of the things that I thought about, I think Cameron spoke to, but just kind of the recognizing that people are going to move throughout county, right, and ensuring that there's a process for as seamless as possible transitions from program to program if need be. The data sharing, has that been finalized?
I can't, it's hard, sorry, I can't join you. This follows a staff meeting that I have at 1, so it's just like a timing thing. So I can't really be there. I just want to say that I think a couple things. One, super interested in all of the conversation that's been happening around data sharing. And that is an important, and it's great to hear that the healthcare system is kind of working on that. I know that that requires some additional work around language because we sometimes mean different things when we use the same words when we're talking to other systems. But so I think the data sharing and having, and really also I think with regionalization, ideally it gives us an opportunity to do a better job of explaining then our impact, both with the data, but also with narrative, because I think it's pretty easy for folks to look out their window and see what's not working, but there's a lot of things that are doing well, and we have a hard time explaining that. So I think really kind of the information piece is really important.
I think we got a somewhat of an official request from Chair Harrington to work on an elevator pitch, like a 60-second. I know this was a lot and I agree, like I think we're gonna work on having something that's a little bit more condensed to explain what we do in each one of these goals. That's not so like technical heavy, but can be, shared more with the public. So thanks for uplifting the need for more accessible information to be able to promote it more widely. This is my first time even talking about the TCPB in 2.5 years, so that just goes to show like we have a lot of work ahead of us to start sharing about the success and the really important and so much work that is happening at a regional level.
And if I could ask a follow-up question to what you just raised, Rachel, because I hear it both in the way that Valeria is speaking to, that we could better uplift the Tri-County Planning Body goals in each community. But Rachel, what I also heard you to say is folks experience homelessness, the visibility of homelessness, and don't understand the progress that like just overall the SHS program is happening. Is that accurate?
Yes. So I was thinking just like we are a region and we should be able to say as a region, this is what we've accomplished. And so that will require us to do more data sharing. And I know that that's being worked on right now and that there's some agreements that have been made. But I think that's a benefit of a regional system, is that you have regional data, ideally that is shared and we can talk about it. Yeah. So I guess both those things. Yeah. Because I hadn't thought about I was thinking more about what Nicole was saying, but I can see how it goes. I can see how it's can be expanded. So thank you.
And that goes to my thought about coordinated entry, so I will say more, but obviously agreeing with you, but the narrative has to be not only what we've done, but what we're not able to do. And, again, I'm sorry for repeating myself about this, but, we need to know who's coming into the system, and we need to be able to present to the public what the demands for the system are. Not that they're affected by anything that's happening in the political universe. But just a sentence that says in the Oregonian that says, "Oh, more people come into the system than are getting out," is not enough. You know, you can point out very nicely what we're doing and you need to do that. But people also need to know that the incoming part of our system is overwhelming and is beyond our control. And I think the data from coordinated entry seems to be some place where you would start to be able to do that. And also, as far as a regionalized approach is that there are needs that can be met in certain counties that will be benefit other counties that maybe do not have those resources. So, anyway. Okay.
Right, I love that.
Taking notes.
Stacy.
I just wanted to push in on that same thing, again, a little bit of a different way. The regional data, the storytelling with, with the data piece and being able to paint that broad picture is really important. But I think something that Rachel said also bears repeating, that the story is also about how providers are getting tied together and connecting and, working in a way that has a regional impact, because you have to counteract that looking outside across the street and what do I see? And so that, I think that's there's maybe a little bit of this process even that needs to be talked about, right? Like somehow the stories are not just the system stories, but they're also somehow provider stories or something, so that there's a real sense of progress in regionalism, right? That this is promising. We think there's something here. Not just we're all going to keep our own special things and we're going to add 5% on top, right? Like, you don't want it to sound like that. You want it to sound like there's a lot more knowledge and experience and regional viewpoint that's been invested in and that can help the system. So I don't know. I'm trying to tune up that piece so that it's ready to make the case.
Right, I'll pose the next question. I'm not seeing any new hands. We've talked where regionalism makes sense, and I know, Valeria, I'm sure you're taking down some ideas for future conversations. I'm curious, where is it most important to have local design and flexibility to serve community? Where's that nexus where, each county is a little different? Where does it make sense for us to understand that flavor? Do we have a bit of sunny day fever?
I feel like we have such a strong network and a structure locally that we cannot think. Not happening in all the counties, let me tell you.
I have a perspective of being an organization that works in 2 counties. For us, I think we, and it's not exactly the same because we are doing supportive housing both in Multnomah County, downtown Portland, but also at Heartwood Commons in Aloha. And I guess you could make the argument that those are very different communities. They are. And the ways, some of the work is pretty much exactly the same. And I think what's different is the partnerships that we have are different because there's different organizations in a way working in those areas. So our mental health provider that we're working with at Heartwood Commons is very different than the mental health provider we're working with in downtown Portland. And I guess also downtown Portland is a little bit, there's a lot of action outside the building that we're dealing with that's a little bit different, but there's a lot that's the same. I am just, so there is some difference that we need to be able to design the programs a little bit differently. But again, there's a lot of things that are the same. So I'm having a hard time. I'm really curious to hear what other people think on this, actually.
Also struggling with it for the opposite reason, because I don't work in Multnomah County, and one of the things that I thought about when I was contemplating this question was just about access to services, and I mean, I feel like we've got more rural areas out here that may not have, you know, readily available public transportation, and I see us kind of even within our county, regionalizing a little bit of the access centers, right? Like one's going to Tiger, hopefully one in Beaverton, there's one in maybe Hillsborough. And so I see that maybe that's something that's more local to us than maybe it would be in Multnomah, where a lot of things are centralized in Portland. Maybe that's not a great thing, but feels like it is. And then even with healthcare, I was just thinking that, you know, with a lot of folks in rural areas, just I was thinking about how impactful loneliness is these days. And I think that opportunities for engagement is just so much, I feel like more readily available in urban areas than it is in rural areas. And so that's something that we would maybe have to think about a little bit deeper than maybe somewhere more urban.
Sure, I see Stacy's got her hand up.
Stacy.
Yeah, I would just add that there's systems that are interwoven with this system, like the employment system, perhaps like healthcare. I don't know all the details of healthcare that do not overlap the 3-county area, right? So when you think about someplace on the slides, you have employment services, you have 2 different providers there when you think about the metro region, right? And so I think it's some of that, the local context, the transportation differences, but also literally you're going to have more people at the table because not everybody's jurisdictions line up. And so that you need the local piece there. You're not going to get to just ignore, oh, well, this county has a different, you know, work source provider, so we're just not going to pay attention to that. It's like, no, you have to bring that in. And so that's where I think the local tables or the local coordination needs to be strong. It needs to be local, right? It needs to be in the jurisdictions that don't overlap. I guess I'll say it that way.
In case there's more questions. He was joking, I play the Jeopardy song in my head to see if we waited long enough. All right, well, we've heard some of this already. I'll just name kind of communication support, data sharing as some of the key things that I've heard from this group, but so far, but are there other areas of work that you'd like the TCBB to think about next after these 6 goals? We're very close to approving all 6 goals. The TCBB is around for the time being. It's a little unknown with the potential SHS reform. But are there other important bodies of work we should be thinking about for regionalization?
Can you finish that thought? I mean, what will happen to these goals if reform happens?
It's not clear. What we've heard is that the RIF would become part, or the regional investment fund, the 5% we set aside. We would no longer be required to set that 5% aside, and instead Metro's 5% administrative budget would be their administrative budget plus regional investment fund. So the goals we have on our county, we as the county would need to think about how we fold those into our standard budget.
I don't know if this is an after these goals or if in conjunction with these goals, but I'm just wondering if there's been any thought to what goal is this? Oh, like I think probably retention pieces, but beyond just wages. So, you know, thinking about, you know, things that I would imagine somebody would say, well, that's probably an agency type of work, but I think regionally we could think about employee wellness and career development opportunities and, you know, developing cohorts, to support one another and, you know, how are we doing those things to support the staff and support the workforce outside of just increasing wages?
This is very timely. Do you want to take this?
Yeah, no, I was gonna say that, these, topics have come up, during the employee recruitment and retention discussions. There's been a work group of service providers, which Soy is part of, that has been meeting over the past year, and their next meeting is actually on Monday. And so these are some of the, oh yeah, and Cameron too, and
Kim will join them.
oh, and Kim, yes, you're part too. So these are some of the pieces that we are hoping make it to the employee recommend retention regional plan. But for sure, thank you for, I'm always so glad to hear that sort of what is coming for the folks that are involved in these work groups and what we're thinking of in partnership with the counties is what is on top of mind for some folks when we come to these spaces. So that's reassuring.
The last question is a fairly straightforward one. How do you all want to be engaged in regionalism? I'll name, you know, we have Zoe here that goes to the Tri-County Planning Body and can be a kind of a quasi liaison for this body. So, you know, we have some opportunities.
Yes.
Yeah, that's kind of what I wrote. I was just wondering if we could have a regular update, you know, as much as it makes sense.
And I was gonna offer a regular update. I'm more than happy to bring the folks that are close to this work and have you all receive a presentation on each one of these plans. And receive our quarterly reports, whenever it makes sense. Everything is listed on our website and I can pass on the link, but yeah, I know that, folks, both, county staff and Metro would be more than happy to come in and get very technical about this. So happy to do that for you all.
Really appreciate you being here. Thank you for making us your first.
Thank you for asking, for giving me the opportunity to talk about this work. It's perfect timing really, because we're more than halfway through these plans, so there's a lot more to talk about than just saying like, it's on their way. It's like, it's been approved, we have like progress happening and we are able to report on it. And yeah, it's really exciting and it's ton of work, and it wouldn't have been possible without the partnership that we have with the counties. And it's just been such a pleasure working with Nicole and all county partners on this. Yeah, regionalism at work for sure. And I'm taking notes. We can coordinate with Nicole, but I would love to bring this conversation to the TCPB meeting and during a staff updates. So, yeah.
Well, thank you, Valeria. You're welcome to stay for the rest of the meeting, but I know you have a drive back to home base. We appreciate you making the drive out here to talk with us.
Of course, you're very welcome. Thanks for having me. Nice meeting you all. Have a good day.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
really appreciate it.
Of course.
Yeah, maybe we can just make it an agenda item for updates from committees.
Yeah.
And have Zoe report out what she's learned from the most recent PCBB.
Those monthly meetings come to me, and as far as
That's
as
right.
far as that, I mean, it's not hard to put those into the agenda that you set us, and some of us actually read those minutes, so.
I'm gonna ask you.
Every month, yes.
How many pages are those packets?
Oh, they're not bad. I just read March, honestly. I don't even, but I just read the last one before we came into that. Okay, well, there we go.
Okay, perfect. We are right on time. So we will move on to programmatic reduction and planning for fiscal year 25-26. Who are we kicking it over to?
Thanks, we'll go to the next slide. It's not new news. We are facing program reductions for 25-26. And so we went through a very long process. April 1, we began notification to executive directors, having conversations with them. Throughout April and early May, we are starting to have program meetings and doing planning both internally at Washington County and with each of those organizations that are facing reductions, to say, what does that look like? How do you work with your staff? We're rolling out some great materials that Nicole and her team put together, as well as having those conversations. Not only how do you have that conversation with your staff, but also what is the timeline and what does that look like? And then starting in mid-May through late June, we'll start having those conversations more system-wide about how do we transfer caseloads, how do we adjust maps for outreach, all of those types of things, recognizing that our goal is for that to be starting to be implemented July 1. Part of our province of Washington County was there is a ramp down period. So for folks that are not carrying a caseload, that ramp down is between July and September, ending September 30th. As long as there are still staff in those positions, Washington County has agreed to pay for those staff who are in those positions. And then for folks who are carrying a caseload, that transition goes through December 31. So as we look to transition caseloads, as long as they're carrying a caseload, we're going to continue to pay for staffing around that, and some of those supportive services that are needed along with that. So happy to pause and take any questions that folks have, just for you all to kind of see what is to come over the coming months. And my calendar is already filling up with these meetings. Some of you are some of those meetings, but we will continue to have a lot of those conversations over the coming month or so. Chair, back to you.
Back to me. I don't see any questions. I think there's deep breaths. Great. All right, we're good to move on. Okay. We're gonna move on to staff updates.
All right, I will take it away, folks. We have had a busy legislative session going on in Salem. Carly's not able to join, so I'm bringing you a bit of a bite-sized update today, just to give some high-level information. And there's more information that's come out since these slides were put together. So I'll start with the Wayback Machine of just a few weeks ago. The Oregon Housing and Community Services Department had their budget heard, which includes incredible investments in homeless solutions across the continuum. We talked a little bit about some of the shelter investments. There's certainly a lot of resources available for or rather resources proposed to prevent evictions, prevent homelessness, help folks get into shelter, and then eventually get into rehousing, and necessary resources to continue the folks we've helped rehouse through the long-term rental assistance program known as LTRA at the state. So we're very excited to see those in the governor's recommended budget. I'm happy to share that both Solutions Council, our Chair Harrington, our Jess Larson here, as well as the Housing Advisory Council submitted strong.
It looks like your guys' audio is cutting in and out. I can't really hear. I don't know if that's just me.
Oh, are others having that issue? No, I think others are hearing clearly. It might be a Wi-Fi connection. I'll talk slowly, though I am one to talk fast. We're excited to see that testimony. There was strong support on the record for these investments, and we're hearing good indicators that the legislature would be supportive of these investments, though big caveat, there's a lot of economic unknowns. The state revenue forecast that legislators will base the budget off of is not until May. And the federal cuts might impact their ability to invest. So we're cautiously optimistic, but hearing good things. And I'll also share on Friday, there's a public hearing for House Bill 5505. That is the bond bill, as it is called, where there's nearly $1 billion of investments in housing development proposed in that bill. That includes resources to develop new homes for rent, new homes for purchase, and permanent supportive housing. So that bill is up for testimony, or excuse me, up for a public hearing Friday. We have letters of support again going in from the Housing Advisory Committee, from our Chair Harrington, and thank you to Kim and Drew for your quick turnaround. The Solutions Council letter of support for those investments is already on the record. So we're excited to have that effort, and thanks to our leadership here for helping us get that in. The other bills you've heard quite a bit about, just want to give an update. House Bill 3644 creates a statewide shelter system that passed out of committee with bipartisan support and is headed to the House floor. I drafted these slides last week. It could have passed by now. I did not update them. So that, again, we're seeing good progress that will move forward. And the last one we haven't talked about in this space, but particularly with all of the changes at the federal level, I wanted to make sure you all were tracking the way the Oregon legislature is interested in showing up for members of our community. We in Oregon are lucky to have fair housing that is above and beyond what is in federal law, to include wage discrimination and other things. There's an effort through Senate Bill 599 to extend fair housing protections to folks regardless of their immigration status. So barring landlords from denying an application because of someone's immigration status. Now, there's necessary call outs in that bill for federal programs. We have to follow what HUD determines is required for those programs, and the legislature has a carve out for federal programs, knowing that that is the requirement. But we are really excited to see this move forward and support our communities that we know have a lot of fear right now. So wanted to uplift that for you. It passed on a bipartisan basis from the Senate, and it's headed to the House already. So we have good indicators that will pass as well, and we're eager to see that move forward. And I didn't put this on the slide here. I know affordable housing preservation, Wood Springs, if folks remember the Wood Springs apartment that was in the news, this is also incredibly important. There is a housing preservation package that's moving through the legislature. It includes resources to preserve affordable housing, it extends tenant notification periods, and there's some vouchers and assistance for folks that are impacted by affordable housing losing their regulatory restrictions. So that's another really important effort to prevent homelessness, and we're excited to see that moving forward. And as I mentioned at the top, the next kind of key step in the legislature, we've got the hearing on Friday. In May, we'll have the new revenue forecast, and then state lawmakers will understand what they have to spend, and then they'll work rapidly in May and June to draft their budget, pass the final policy bills, and adjourn by the end of June. So it's got a marathon ahead. We'll bring back another update in May. But with that, I'll pause and see if there's any questions. I talk a lot.
Now you keep all that in your brain.
All right, we'll move on to other staff updates. I want to quickly flag, I didn't get this added to the slide in time, but we are rescheduling June's meeting. It falls on Juneteenth. So look for more information about that next week. But the county observes Juneteenth and we will be closed. We know many of your offices observe Juneteenth if you're here for work reasons. So we'll go ahead and reschedule that to a time that works for us all. I don't think we can cancel. We have a lot coming at you, so we'll get that rescheduled. I also just wanted to provide a quick update on some recent federal actions. We, of course, are watching things closely. Things remain a little bit nebulous. I was in DC at the end of last month talking to our delegation. There's just a lot of unknowns. It's not clear what's going to happen. this administration has released a proposed budget or talked about releasing a proposed budget that would include dramatic cuts to public housing authorities. So it's not good news to share, but there's not concrete news on what's coming on the federal budget future. Where we do have concrete news is a program you may have heard of, you might not be tracking, but it's called the Emergency Housing Voucher. This was an ARPA era program, so the American Rescue Plan Act included these emergency housing vouchers that went to public housing authorities across the nation to essentially provide resources to get folks out off the streets during the pandemic and into housing. It was a temporary program. They provided it to us and said, you'll have it until 2029. We have not received the formal word yet, but public housing authorities across the nation are receiving the word that that program is being rescinded early sometime in 2026. So we don't quite know what that looks like yet. We'll have more to share when we get that formal word, but wanted to let you all know that this is happening. We have 80 households that are impacted here. We're incredibly lucky to have SHS and state resources to help support those households. And the Public Housing Authorities Association of Oregon is doing a survey assessing what the needs are across the state. And the timing's pretty good for us to help elevate this to the state legislature. So we'll have more to share on that as we know more, but wanted to make sure you all had that information. We aren't directly communicating with households yet, because we just don't know what's coming. We don't know when in 2026. So when we know more information, we'll communicate, likely in coordination with the public housing authorities in the region, knowing that, you know, our Portland Metro region is one community. But it's a sad impact. It's 80 households for us. I know it's about 300 households in Multnomah County. We're working to understand the impact statewide, and we'll have more to share when we understand that impact. But it's a stark reminder that we are in hard times, and our local resources will help us stay afloat and move forward. One more federal program we're aware of, folks might be on the Fair Housing Council of Oregon's email list. If you're not, I'll share with you that they shared they received word that their federal grant is being rescinded. So we certainly know lots of organizations are struggling right now with this federal impact. And we'll continue to report as we know more, and know that the department is doing some scenario planning, working to understand the impact of what might happen, what might change with any federal changes. That's a bit of a downer, but maybe to bring us back up, I'm going to skip to the third bullet point and remind you, today is the last day to RSVP for the county's volunteer appreciation event. This is a dinner that will take place. We do our December luncheon as our department's appreciation for you all, but this is an opportunity to join other boards and commissions and hear from them and celebrate and join in being celebrated rather from the county's perspective for the volunteer work you do here. And BNF, I think, had to hop off for another meeting. I'll pause and see, is she still on?
When was that ARPA funding gonna be ending anyway? Like you said early, but like when was the end?
2029.
Maybe if we just don't hear anything.
Oh, good thinking.
Take the positive spin.
Right? I'm gonna hold on to that hope.
We just go with that.
I'm gonna hold on to that. Well, BNF had to hop off for another meeting. She passed on her updates for the Housing Advisory Council to me, so I'll give that to you all. The board approved 5 new HAC members that we have joining. There's 2 members at large, 1 veteran representative and 1 planner, as well as a finance professional that are now filled and represented on the HAC. I'll call out particularly for this group, Chriselle Lucas is joining the HAC. She is a member of the Forest Grove Foundation, one of an SHS contracted provider. So we continue to have, with Rachel, have kind of a development experience, also an SHS provider, but that development experience here, and have that homelessness experience on the HAC, and make sure that we have perspectives on all sides working on housing, across the housing continuum rather. The HAC committee is preparing to approve the Housing Authority's fiscal year 25-26 budget in May. HAC members will be receiving an orientation in April to gain some information ahead of that meeting. So their meeting next month will be the orientation to the Housing Authority side of the budget, which just so folks are aware, we in the Department of Housing Services technically have 2 two separate budget. We have our county budget and then our housing authority budget. In homeless services, the housing authority budget does not impact us, so we're impacted by the department's budget. The hack will also next week continue talking about transitional housing and housing types and the role that the housing authority should play in that work. Understanding the risks and benefits and considerations for implementing new transitional housing and other housing types in the county. In addition, the real estate team will be sharing more about their 3 to 5 year real estate plan. So if that's something of interest to you, tune in next week. As a reminder, I know some of you attended the one that occurred on Monday. There is another public meeting records and ethics overview occurring on April 30th. So if you did not attend the first one and you have not yet attended one of these trainings, I highly encourage you to attend. It's just an important reminder of the complexities of public meetings law. We hold these annually and BNF is the key contact to get subscribed. If you already attended the one on Monday, you don't have to go again. It's the exact same content. So know that you can check that off your list. The last thing I'll share is HAC is working on updating their bylaws. When Nadia is back full-time, we'll get back into that work for us, but they are going through an update to their bylaws process, and they're blatantly stealing some of our formatting on membership. So we can pat ourselves on the back, and then we'll probably blatantly steal from them when we update our bylaws as we work towards uniformity there. Well, that is all from me. I know Jess is here and has some updates, so I'll pass it over to her.
Hi, everybody. Nice to see you. Great conversation. I'm just sad Valeria had to leave early, but I'm just really grateful to have her out. And also it was really lovely to listen in on all of your thoughts towards regionalism and also in support of our local work here. Just thanks to Cameron and Zoe for your work at those committees, but also I was looking around the table, you're all kind of showing up in so many ways to support our system here in Washington County. I just feel a lot of appreciation here at the end of our meeting. I asked Nicole for a bullet on your agenda so I could walk on a couple items. Mainly kind of stuff that's you might be hearing in the news, and just to create space here for questions and also discussion. And maybe prompts for staff as we think about preparing for our agenda next time. So first, this is not in the news, and I don't think it will be in the news, but we kind of got like a yellow flag email. I don't know if that's a thing, but just like a hey, heads up from our forecasters at Metro. I mean, as we all know, if you're watching the evening news, the economy is in a giant question mark, concerning state, and the vast majority of our resources come from a revenue source that is very, very influenced by economic conditions. So I think the forecasters just wanted to say like, hey, heads up, we don't know, but this could have significant impacts. And transparently, I just wanted to share that all with you. It creates a different sense of planning for us. We've just gone through 6 months of adjusting our system because of the adjusted tax base for the forecasting work. But this would become like kind of the first of what we've always known is going to be a part of the SHS experience that we're a part of. It is a very volatile revenue source, and this is the volatility in front of us. We don't know what that means. We have some cushions built in through reserves. We will always be planning and always be bringing that information to you as quickly as we have any. Right now, I would say revenues are on track, if not just slightly below where they should be according to the December forecast. But we're all watching the economy every day. On a brighter side, and kind of related, you've probably also been watching the news about Multnomah County's, this isn't right, their budget deficit led to a very direct and specific ask to Metro to consider making use of their one-time funding that had not yet been allocated from admin. And Metro has been working with Multnomah County and the city of Portland and intends to move forward. And because of that, it is Metro's intention to distribute that allocated admin one-time funding proportionately to the 3 counties. So we don't know how much that is yet. Multnomah County is getting 15 million. We have 33.33% of the distribution rate. There are some caveats there within. The Metro Council is still set to vote on this policy opportunity, if you will. And I just wanted to share with you all that our next step as staff is to talk with our board about this on May 27th, which is also our quarterly update to the board. And we've been working towards this, but now the moment will necessitate us in creating a kind of a one-time funding plan for every year when we close out the books and we know how much revenue we received, we know how much revenue we expended. We will then have one-time funding or a deficit that we have to fill with our reserves. And then there will be a policy that the board helps us to shape to determine then where those one-time resources are prioritized. So we are starting to work on that in preparation for May 27th, I believe it is. And I think that might be something useful to bring to you all before we see our board in May. Of course, it's going to be board directed, but we always really appreciate the guidance this committee brings into that work. Yeah.
So at a time when maintenance of projects is difficult, what are you thinking about for one-time funds? What would you do with these?
I'm so excited for that conversation. That is one of the items on the list, is a kind of a long-term capital reserves for all of the wonderful infrastructure we've been able to create with our one-time funding so far. We know in years 10, 15, 20, there's some big reinvestments that are going to be needed in those capital investments. Some owned by the county, many not owned by the county. And so that's actually one of the items that the staff have put on this draft list so far that we're working on. But Jim, if it's all right, like that's exactly the conversation we want to bring to you next time. Happy to talk offline too. But just to finish on my agenda items, so we don't plan to be making any decisions about what to do with those resources. And again, we don't know what the dollar amount of those resources will be, because we'll want to close out the year with the changes in the revenue. We're still unclear on exactly how we're going to end up this year. Our partners are adjusting as quickly as we are. So our plan would be that we kind of take a look at these one-time investments at the close of each fiscal year heading into the next fiscal year.
Does it feel like there's a tension between making a decision between having something be a one-time investment versus placing it in reserves? And if so, how are you managing that conversation?
Yeah, I again, we're not yet managing that conversation. I think there's a list of potential kinds of priorities for one-time investments. And some of them will be like filling up our reserves, right? If we close out a year and we had to use reserves 3 years ago because we had a bad economic cycle, if we have carryover funds 3 years later, it's probably a wise time to fill up those reserves. So again, there's going to be a draft list of potential kinds of priorities for one-time resources, and those are the kinds of tensions we're going to want to hold and figure out how to create some recommendations around prioritization. And that also just by indirectly a note that Metro Council is having this conversation kind of concurrently as well. The other piece that was in the news was yesterday, Multnomah County released a really impressive new dashboard. If you've had a chance to go in and look at their updated website, they've been doing some pretty extensive data work over the last couple years. I know our team is learning a lot and thinking about it a lot and has already been working on our own by name list with many of you as well. But it was a pretty big announcement and the increased sense of the need. And I just wanted to clarify a little bit that there's a lot of data that's going to be happening here in this next little minute, because this is a by name list that Multnomah County has been using through their coordinated entry data, so yada, yada, yada. We can answer questions with HEDCON. And simultaneously, the 3 counties have been working together on our timeline for finalizing the data on the point in time count. Which are two different data sets with a lot of overlap. We probably will be releasing our Washington County point in time count data here in the next few weeks. That data is not yet finalized. I can share that it is going up. It's significantly going up in our shelter data count, our shelter count, which is reflective of the wonderful investments and progress we've made in our shelter capacity, but it is also going up in our street count, which is also reflective of the capacity to reach people where we hadn't previously been able to reach them. But it is all cumulatively reflective of the growing and continuous need and economic conditions that are impacting our communities. So that is another point of kind of media relevance and data relevance, and I hope continued conversation with you all. And then the last thing is that Katie already gave our update on preparing for next year. But I would say deeply the experience of calling many of our providers, Katie and I took our list of directors who partner or contract with us, and we split the list and called them each a couple weeks ago to talk with them about the reductions in each of their organizations. And I just came away with such deep gratitude for our system. Organizations were very understanding, impacted, troubled, concerned, and strategic, and thoughtful about our partnership and opportunities to continue to strategize. And I just want to say thank you. That's what I wanted to wrap up my talking points here with. It was really a kind of a humbling and gratifying experience to be a part of this system and this work with many of you here at this table or at home joining us, but also just our whole system of providers who are working together here in Washington County. I know it's a daunting moment, but I also see a lot of hope and potential and transformation that's still to come through this system. So thank you.
All right, thanks. That's the end of staff updates. Chair, I'm curious for your thoughts or the committee's thoughts on this. We could go back to the consent agenda item, or we could bring it back next month if folks want more time to sit with it.
I think
Bringing it back.
Bring it back.
Yeah, I think we bring it back anyway.
To reflect what I think Rachel said before, would it be that difficult for us to be able to look at what we're agreeing to?
Yes,
I mean, you
it's-
could just put it on the
it's
agenda and
usually-
some of us could look at it.
Yeah, Jim, it's usually sent out with the agenda. This was my mistake. I don't normally send them out, but we had Nadia out and Chelsea out, and I wanted to get things for you, and I forgot that step.
I did send it during this meeting.
Yeah,
So it's now in
thank
your
you.
inbox.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, next week.
All right, we'll bring that
Any
back next
questions?
time.
Yeah.
We'll be bringing that back, and we'll talk about Access Center programming
And many other things.
and many other things.
It's much more.
And yeah, and point in time count. We'll be sharing the point in time count information to happen.
Any questions for the good of the order? Online? Great, I think our meeting is adjourned a few minutes early.
All right.
Everybody have a great day, get outside.
Great. Thank you, Chair.
Pat Rogers is probably on. By name.